Reports are coming in that Sean Payton and the Broncos are getting warm waters in terms of getting a deal done, at least according to Tom Pelissero. We're going to be breaking down this latest report on the Broncos head coaching search right now on today's Broncos Breakdown by Chat Sports. I am your host, Matthew Peterson. Enough about me. Let's get right into it. Tom Pelissero and Ian Rappaport host this show called The Insiders, and they drop some good nuggets on there from time to time. And they talked about the Broncos head coaching search and where Sean Payton is going to end up. And here's what Pelissero said. Sean Payton has already spoken with the Texans, is going to speak with the Panthers, but it sure seems like, though, that if Sean Payton is going to take a job, everything is lining up for Denver. And here we go. The rumors are they are just running all over. To me, this sounds like ownership has taken over, which we knew that they were going to be in charge of this, right? When Hackett got fired, the press conference the next day, Greg Penner said, ownership, a.k.a. me, are going to be leading the search, and we'll take George Payton's advice as we go from coach to coach. But I don't think George Payton would really like to give up a first-round pick for a coach. He's a GM. He looks at that as a pretty valuable bullet in the chamber, even if late first-round picks, and we'll look at that later on, aren't always as big as hits as we think they are. But I think ownership is looking at this going, we're not going to go and get some random DC from San Francisco. Sorry, D'Amico Ryans. We want the big guy, right? We want the number one candidate. If it's not Jim Harbaugh, it's Sean Payton. And they're just not going to let him walk. I just think that if Sean Payton is going to come back to coaching, Denver does make the most sense for him. When you look at where Sean Payton is interviewing, let's break down these four options for him. There's Denver, there's Carolina, there's Arizona, and there's Houston. The Texans have gone through a coach. Denver's not very good either, but they've gone through a coach once a year for the last 3 seasons. Arizona, which we'll look at in a moment, might not be a good fit for Sean Payton. So then that leaves us with Carolina, which David Tepper is really rich too, and they can offer Sean Payton $20 or so million, just like the Broncos can. But I don't know. It's just something about Sean Payton talking about the triangular relationship of head coach, front office, and ownership. And I think the Broncos ownership and front office is top 10 in the NFL. I just remember when they went to London, reading a really good article from The Athletic about the level of detail that went in to the trip they took to go to London, and having players' favorite food shipped overseas because it has to get through customs months in advance. That's not the kind of stuff bottom tier ownership does. But that's what they do in Denver, right? And so I think that kind of stuff is going to be maybe something that pushes him closer to Denver instead of Carolina. And then there's Russ, which you could look at as a good or a bad thing. Most people are going to say it's a bad thing, and that's fair. I get that, and I kind of do think so too. But Sean Payton might look at it as not such a bad thing after all. He wanted Russ at one point in New Orleans, and maybe he thinks he can resurrect him. But let's talk more about the Cardinals, because why not Arizona? Kyler Murray is a young, up-and-coming QB. That would make some sense, right? There's some good ownership there, too. Well, here's what Tom Pelissero said. Arizona was a possibility, too, and they have permission to speak with him. But once they hired Monti Ossenfort as their general manager, that made it seem pretty unlikely. Sean is going to want to set up a program his way, and having the GM hired first and running the coaching search is probably not exactly how he would have drawn it up himself. Now, like I mentioned, Sean Payton, it was rumored at one point to maybe be interested in Russell Wilson. So with that, kind of compounded with Payton hopping on Colin Cowherd's The Herd and saying it's probably going to cost a mid to late first-round trade compensation to get him. The Broncos are in that area, right? They're going to be picking, from the 49ers, from the Dolphins, between 24 and 31. So I do think when you look at those 4 places he's interviewing, Denver makes the most sense. Now, there is door number 3, which is he takes a year off. He doesn't do anything, right? He waits for the Chargers job to open up next year when Brandon Staley once again underwhelms, or the Cowboys if that's what he really wants, right? That is a real possibility that I don't want to be overbrushed, right? We have to remember that he very well may just not return this season. Now there's the whole Dan Quinn side of things. Joey, in the comment section, you're going to like this, but what do you prefer? Would you rather have Sean Payton or Dan Quinn and a first-round pick? Because I don't see a way they get Sean Payton without giving up their first-round pick. So we'll talk about that first-round pick for the second half of today's show and why maybe it's not as important as some might think it is. I'm kind of walking in the middle of the fence here, but let me know, which one do you prefer in the comment section? Let's talk about this first-round pick. This first-round pick is giving lots of you guys fits about, hey, I don't want to lose a first-rounder for a head coach. Why don't we just go get Jim Caldwell, Dan Quinn, another coach, and keep the first-rounder? That seems like a much better alternative to me. And to you, I say, that's not a bad thing to say. I don't think that's a bad take, but I think you might be maybe overvaluating. Is that a word? Yeah. Overestimating how powerful the first-round pick is between 24 and 32. So we'll discuss that in just a second. Now, when the Denver Broncos do make a head coaching hire, we will be going live here on the channel. You will not want to miss out. If it's Sean Payton, if it's Dan Quinn, if it's one of my top two guys right there, I think we're popping champagne. I think we're popping champagne, ladies and gentlemen. We went live when Hackett got fired. We'll go live for the next head coach. So if you want to be a part of it, hit that sub button today. So as I was saying, though, when it comes to first-round picks, later in the first is not as valuable, right? When we think first, we think game, like franchise-altering talent. And that's true for the first half. The second half of the first, not the case. We showed this graphic a couple of days ago, but I want to expand on it. The 2019 NFL Draft, which I think it's fair to start grading this draft. Look at the back half of it, from picks 23 to 32. You've got some good picks, Montez Sweat. Like, you see what I'm saying? There's a lot of bad picks. If Denver picks 28, now it's not the same from year to year, but the point is, just because it's a first rounder doesn't mean you're getting bona fide all-pro talent. If you don't agree with me, let's look at 2018's NFL Draft here, okay? Go back another year now. 2018 from 23 to 32, there are some good picks there, right? Lamar Jackson, awesome pick right there. Terrell Edmonds, awesome pick. But if you were looking at 29 to 31, the point I'm making is, yeah, there are some good picks, but I don't think the hit rate is as high as you think it is. I'm looking at it right now. Let's use 2017. Let's go 2017. 10 picks there from 23 to 32, where Denver is going to be picking right now from 24 to 31. And I see an F, I see a C minus, I see an F, I see a C. Like, this is a good draft, and you're batting about 500-ish. For first round, you usually think you're batting much higher than that, right? You think first round pick is surefire, can't miss. And what have we just found out over the last 3 drafts we looked at? It's 500 or less at good stretches for the end of the first round. Us couch general managers, we tend to overvalue first round picks. Talk to the Rams about it. I mean, top 10, top 15 picks, those are great. Don't get me wrong. But when you leave the top 16 of a first round, take it upon yourself. Go look at a random draft and then look at the back 16 of the first round and see how many of those guys got a second contract with the teams they played for. In fact, we can do that right now for the Broncos. Let's look at the last 5 sort of later first-round picks that the Broncos had. Not Patrick Surtain. You got to hit those top 10 ones. But Noah Fant, 20th overall. Probably not worth a first-round pick anymore. I don't think Seattle or Denver would say so. Garrett Bowles, 20th overall. That's a good pick, right? You had some holding problems early on, but I'm going to say that's a good pick. Paxton Lynch, F. Shane Ray, did he make it to year 4? I don't think so. Bradley Roby didn't get a second contract. In fact, none of these guys got a second contract with the Broncos. So before you start, banging your gavel of you can't give up a first, find me a first-round pick for Denver that's going to be between 23 and 32, where they will be, that's gotten a second contract. That's what I'm just trying to make right now, is I like first-round picks. I'm not saying blast them into the sun the moment you get outside the top 16, because sure, you can find some hits. But the idea that there is a guarantee Pro Bowl talent waiting for you that's going to change your franchise around at pick 26, I don't buy it. I don't think a late first rounder at the end of the day should be the ultimate deciding factor when it comes to picking the next head coach. If you want Sean Payton, do not let where the 49ers end in the playoffs be the deciding factor for you, okay? That can't be something you have to get over, right? That late first rounder should not be weighed into who the next head coach and potential. I mean, if they botch this head coaching hire, it's bad right now. It's 7 straight years of no postseason football, sub 500 and whatnot since 2015. But it could get way worse. And so this hire has to be right. And I think a first rounder that's 27th overall is worth swallowing if you think Sean Payton is the guy. And that, I'm speaking right to Greg Penner, who I know is watching on his way to his interview tomorrow in San Francisco with DeMeco Ryans. So we'll get to more Broncos news and rumors in just a second, but today's show was made possible by BetUS. Check them out, chatsports.com/bet. Use promo code Broncos125. It's kind of funny that there's a decent chance the Broncos made 2 huge trades in the last 2 years, and both of those trades resulted in a pick that may be the last pick of the round because they won the Super Bowl. The Rams and Big Cock Brock might do it with the Niners. I'm just saying it would be, I wouldn't say very Denver-esque because it's not like they have a long history of trading picks away that end up going to Super Bowl winning teams, but it'd be a little bit unlucky. So whatever picks you want to make in the postseason, make them at chatsports.com/bet and use that promo code to get a 125% deposit bonus. Let's talk about our X right now. So, no, that's next, actually. I got ahead of myself. You probably know where I'm going with it, though. But I do want to bring this up. Ian Rappaport tweeted out that the Falcons are interviewing Vic Fangio. Why do we care? Here's why. Remember when Sean Payton in December said, I kind of want to get back into coaching, which we all knew was happening? Well, he came out with an early candidate list of who his coordinators would be. And Vic Fangio was on that. And that was a roadblock for Sean Payton coming to Denver, right? If Sean Payton's like, if I'm coming back, I want the dream team of coordinators. I want Dan Quinn. I want Frank Reich. And I want Vic Fangio. And if Vic Fangio's not going to come back to Denver, maybe that's something Sean Payton would just rule off the Broncos for. Well, if Vic Fangio gets the Falcons DC job, which I'm a little surprised he's interviewing right now because I thought he was going to go wherever Sean Payton went, maybe that makes a path for Sean Payton to Denver just a little bit wider. You know what I mean? So just keep an eye on that. I thought Vic Fangio and Sean Payton were going to be those annoying kids in gym class that were like a package deal. Maybe they can be split up, and maybe that would open up an easier path for Payton to come to the Broncos. Now let's talk about our ex-girlfriend here. Diana Rossini, not our ex-girlfriend, but the New York Jets are meeting with former Denver Broncos head coach Nathaniel Hackett. I don't know what to make of this. I don't think Hackett's going to be if he got the job, I think Hackett's a fine coach. It was just clear he was way in over his head and was too early to become a head coach. He may be a good head coach in 10 or so years if he gets a second chance, right? If he's on a staff and they fire their coach and he's the interim, kind of like Steve Wilkes. Steve Wilkes was a disaster in Arizona. He got out in 1 year just like Hackett. So maybe Hackett just was ahead of his skis and was just a little too early on the scene. I could see him being a good, fine OC for the Jets. It's also hard to grade an OC that doesn't call plays, which he did in Denver, and it was not a good job. But he was the OC for the Packers, of course, beforehand. And, well, it was the other LaFleur, the one he could be replacing the Jets there, Matt LaFleur, who called plays in Green Bay. So it's hard to really evaluate an offensive coordinator that doesn't call plays. But that is the latest on our ex, Nathaniel Hackett. Good luck, Nate. But I appreciate all of you guys for tuning into today's edition of the Broncos Breakdown. Stay tuned for more Broncos head coaching buzz out there by subscribing to the channel.